Hello, peeps and creeps, and welcome to Fright Club. I'm Gav, he's Danny.
Hello.
We're the Fright Club and this is a brand new episode of Monday Night Frights. On tonight's show, we're checking in to room 1408. Ooh. And we're back with episode 5.12 of Monday Night Frights. And we're talking about a Stephen King short story, Room 1408. It's not called Room 1408, it's just called 1408. Okay. But for some reason, I always say Room 1408. So, Danny.
Are you sure it's not like 1408?
1408. Could be.
Room 1408. But no, it's 1408 because it's room 8 on the 14th floor.
It is.
1408.
Well, or is it the 14th floor?
Oh. Because is it
actually the just floor?
A tear in space and time?
As well, we'll get into it. But this was one that you chose, Danny. You said that you had a wee bit of nostalgia for this one.
I have a bit of nostalgia for this. It's because I watched it when it first came out on DVD in 2007. I was staying at a friend's house and his dad come back from Extravision with a copy of 1408, and we sat and watched it. And I just remember at the time, I think it was only just started getting into horror and stuff. And this is the same, I think I mentioned back in the Evil Dead episode, that my introduction to Evil Dead was at a friend's house. This is the same friend where I watched 1408 for the first time.
Not the same night?
Not the same. No, it wasn't the same night. It wasn't the same night. Back-to-back horror fest. But no, so I had rented 1408 and we sat and watched it. And I just remember the end of this. And we'll talk a bit in a while about the endings of 1408. But I happen to have seen what I consider to be the more impactful ending, and was just like, bah! And like everything. It's an emotional roller coaster of a movie. Like, I think even watching it back for this, I was like, this still is quite an emotional roller coaster. Maybe being a bit older and a bit more critical of movies and characters and stuff, it didn't quite hit me the same way it did when I was younger. But I still think there's quite a lot of emotional weight in this, and I still can't hear that song, the "It's Only Just Begun." Like, I remember after watching this film first time and then walking into a shop one day and that coming on, I was like, fucking hell, the shop's going to get torn down around me. But yeah, I definitely, like, it's I would say one of my more earlier sort of horror, because that was 15 years ago now that this came out. So this film's 15 years old in October. So I was 13. Yeah, I was 13 years old when I first watched this. So I think it was sort of one of my first kind of fortes into horror. I'm probably not the first. I would say it's maybe the third King adaptation I would have seen, because I would have seen Green Mile, or no, I would have seen Stand By Me and It by this point in my life. And I think I maybe would have seen Stand By Me. So it was either the third or the fourth King adaptation I'd ever seen. I think it's one of the better King adaptations out there as well.
Yeah, it's based on a short story of the same name. And a lot of people do say that this is one of the better overlooked adaptations. So one of the better ones that isn't a big film, basically. Although
considering
it was very successful.
It won a good few awards at the time, and and it had two great leads in it. You had John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson, who were the poster boys for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely having Sam Jackson in it helped the box office, because the budget for it was about 25 million and it made 133 million. The box office, which is massive for such a small sort of production. Well, it wasn't a small production, but you know what I mean. Like, it was a very kind of small movie. And I don't know what the marketing or anything was like, but I think having Sam Jackson on the poster definitely sold it, because this would have just been before he signed on to be Nick Fury to start to kickstart the MCU. Yeah, which obviously would.
I just remember the poster for it, because again, it was, I think they had the posters up around the time it came out, and then they had the DVD covers, and it was just Cusack's face and Jackson's face sort of side by side, separated by the like keyhole, and then the 1408 and like bold brass lettering, which I love. I love the design of the 1408 on the posters, but then the title on the film is just white text, 1408, and it's kind of like you put all the effort into making a beautiful title for the promotional material and the posters and stuff, and then the movie it's just like block numbers, except for later on. I love when we see the numbers as the room is dying, melting away from the door plate. I fucking that I love that. And we'll talk more about that in a bit.
We do love a good opening title in this.
We do.
Title card there isn't really a title card to this as such.
It's just titles that come over the opening. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was directed by Michael Hafström, who I think is Swedish, and he directed the Clive Owen film Derailed, which also starred Jennifer Aniston. It was written by Matt Greenberg. The original script was written in 2004, whenever Weinstein Company optioned the short story.
One of the scariest things in the opening credits was saying Al Harvey's name.
Produced by Bob and Harvey Weinstein.
Mm-hmm.
So he wrote the original draft in 2004. Matt Greenberg is one of the writers on the most recent adaptation of Pet Sematary. He also wrote Reign of Fire, that dragon film starring All right. Christian Bale as well. So, and he's done quite a lot of work over the years, quite an accomplished screenwriter. But after that draft, there was a team of screenwriters hired, two men basically, Scott Alexander and Laurie Karaszewski, who are a team, and they've written films together over the years. One of them was Ed Wood, and they also wrote People versus Laurie Flint, and they've worked on many films over the years. So they kind of rewrote the screenplay and made it what it is for this film. They wrote that in 2005, and then filming started in late 2006, and it was released in 2007, as you said earlier on. It is based on a short story by Stephen King. The original story, I think it was in an audiobook, so there was no written form. It was originally in an audiobook, and then it was written for Everything's Eventual, that collection of short stories. And I think the original short story is quite a bit different to this film. Obviously, they had to add some stuff in and make it more of a feature film. I think the character, John Cusack's character, gets more of a backstory in the film compared to the short story, and the endings are different as well. So I haven't read the short story, but I kind of do want to go now and read it. Actually, the short story I was reading, I was doing a bit of research, Danny, as you know, what I like to do on this show, research. Whenever he wrote the short story, he was coming up with ideas. Obviously, Stephen King's fucking genius, like terms of ideas. Like the man just can come up with ideas just willy-nilly out of nowhere.
They just flow out of him.
Jealous of him. But the original idea and concept was really just supposed to be an example of writing in his book on writing. It was supposed to be a part of the prologue for that, where he was sort of he was trying to use that as an example of how he writes, and then how stories can change as he writes the story. But there must have been something there, and he decided to write it, or include it into this audiobook, and then eventually put it into Everything's Eventual. Because I mean, the guy just releases stuff all the fucking time. Like, is there ever a point where there's not either a Stephen King book out, or a collection, or something, something coming out within the space of that year?
He's just a powerhouse. He's an absolute literary powerhouse. I think at the minute I've been flat out listening to Kingcast. Shout out to Kingcast. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely encouraged me to go and discover more of King, because I love, like, pretty much every adaptation I've watched of King, even the shit ones. I still enjoy them. And I will admit I need to read more King. But yeah, 1408 for me, as you said, it's sort of one of those ones that slips under people's radars, and it's like, oh no, but you should watch it. Like, it's definitely worth watching. As I said, I like it because it does have a bit of a nostalgia thing for me. but also I still think it's a decent film. Like it's nowhere near one of the worst, not one of the best either, but it's still worth a watch.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely a good film. This was the first time I'd watched it from start to finish. Whenever you suggested doing it, I was like, oh, I think I watched that, and I actually did see a good chunk of the middle of the film when he's actually in the room and stuff. And I mentioned about the paintings. Do you remember I was saying,
Yes,
is there a painting that comes to life? There's a segment about the paintings that he talks about, but I didn't know the start of it and I didn't know the end of it, so I must have just checked in and then checked out before the end of the film at some point. But I'm glad that I was able to watch it all the way through this time around, and I did enjoy it. I do like the fact that King. It feels like this is kind of an homage, a little bit of an homage to that haunted hotel room subgenre, haunted house subgenre. I mean, he's already explored the haunted hotel with the Overlook and The Shining, which is amazing. But this one is a bit different, although there is similarities with how certain things happen. This one's more about a specific room in a hotel that isn't haunted, and I like that I feel like it was also a bit of a like tribute to the likes of Psycho and stuff like that. And there's a moment in this film actually when he's in the ocean surfing and he hits his head or something on a wave or something, and he's lying on the beach. I don't know if you caught this, but on his wetsuit it says Psycho 1. Did you get that? Yeah,
pick that up. Yep.
That was a nice little homage by the director to put that in there, just because I feel like this story is a bit of an homage to Psycho.
It's got elements of that in, and yeah, I think I really enjoy how, as you say, we've been to the Overlook Hotel, and that's that's a story that takes place within the whole hotel and the grounds of the hotel. And then, I mean, if you really want to get into it, you kind of got the Doctor Sleep element of it. Whereas this is very much about like a concentrated, it's concentrated evil. And even Samuel Jackson's line about, Cusack's asking him about, is it poltergeists? What am I dealing with here? And he's like, it's an evil fucking room. It's all about the room. Is about 1408. And I think definitely like there's some amazing set pieces in this. I think some of the cutaways and stuff and the way the room's laid out and the way they kind of move around the room constantly is great. Now, did you notice there wasn't a blue hue in this movie, but it was most certainly nicotine stained?
Oh yes,
the whole way through the film, there's like a yellowiness,
rusty, yellowy type thing. Yeah,
it's not even sepia. It's just nicotine stained is the only way I could really sort of describe the filter of this film.
It definitely is. I wonder, was that done for a certain reason? Funny you should mention that, Danny, because I wrote an article on the frightclubni.com website as part of our Shades of Horror series. And in fact, it was part one of our Shades of Horror series where I look at color psychology in films, and the first one I did was yellow. So much of that article that I wrote about was about how yellow often in films, anyway, in cinema, it represents madness, or your descent into madness. So if you look at that, then you could see that it is kind of Cusack's character. What's he called? Mike. His character kind of does descend into madness in it, or the room tries to make him mad.
Yep.
Because nobody has survived in that room for longer than 1 hour.
Yeah.
He ends up surviving the whole night, basically. Well, certain versions of it.
Well.
Or did he survive?
Or did he survive at all? Who knows?
But also funny you should mention the color yellow, because I do mention in that article as well about The Shining, and the yellow walls of the corridor in The Shining. That famous scene where Danny's on his tricycle. There's a real, you're on your tricycle, Danny. There's a real sort of yellow tinge to the walls and stuff, and that's supposed to create this idea of sort of insecurity and madness. And I will say, Cusack's great in this, but there are moments where he is a wee bit sort of like Jack Torrance. So there were some similarities there, and he's also a writer.
Yeah,
which
that's one of the big things.
Stephen King loves to write about writers,
and that's
especially.
I think what's great about this is he's a horror writer. He's a paranormal investigative writer who doesn't want to be a paranormal investigative writer. He wants to write like real human dramas, and you kind of get that whole thing with his first book that he's written. He's doing a book signing and everybody's getting his paranormal book signed, but somebody comes up with a copy of his first book. What was it, the
Long Road Home? I think
the Long Road Home, yeah. And sits down. He's like, "Where did you get what book rack did you get this under?" And she's like, "Oh, eBay." But you can tell he's got a real, like, he's like, "Oh, this was my one good work." I guess he gets real kind of arsey with Samuel L. Jackson whenever he kind of pulls apart. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I love that scene because it's quite subtle acting from John Cusack, because he's at a book signing. We'll just kind of paint the picture. He's at a book signing for his new book. It's a non-fiction book about ghosts and blah blah blah, the top 10 haunted places wherever. And there's only maybe 5 or 6 people there, and they're all, as you say, they're all getting that signed. But this young, and she's quite a young woman, isn't she? She's like maybe early 20s or maximum early 20s.
Student type.
Yeah, it's an old battered copy, and as soon as he sees it, he sort of has that smile across his face. And he doesn't like, oh wow, but it's very subtle, and you can tell that it kind of touches his heart that he's seen it, and it's probably been quite a few years since he's seen any sort of copy of that book. But in that short scene, you can tell that in a way, I think that was supposed to paint the picture that he is kind of embarrassed with himself and the direction that his career as a writer has went, because yes, he wanted to be a proper serious writer, and I suppose in many ways he feels like a failure now, and he's sold out a little bit because he's went into the kind of non-fiction, making lists and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you get all that before that scene anyway, with he's doing like a Q&A before the signing, and people are asking him, what's the scariest place you've ever been? Have you ever encountered poltergeists? And then he kind of goes on a bit of a kind of cynical, pessimistic sort of rant about how like he's been to all these places and he's never seen anything. Somebody asks him, so are you saying ghosts aren't real? And he pretty much says, "I,"
yeah, well, he says he's never seen a ghost.
But it's his way of being like, it's all bullshit. He's basically calling his own work bullshit. Which again I think is great, and I love that. Even before all this, the opening credits, as we said, are a bit bland, but they're over shots of him like driving down and parking up at this B&B. And he walks in and he gets sort of welcomed, and the people who run the B&B are telling him all about, how haunted it is and where the ghosts are seen. And, there's a grey lady and all the usual kind of feel you get from those kind of haunted places. And then he goes in, stays in the haunted room, and he's doing all his like electromagnetic readings and stuff. And he's kind of recording his thoughts as he's going along. And it's just very obvious that he's just, he's not sold on any of it.
No, not at all. He's a complete cynic. He doesn't believe in ghosts, and stuff like that. But I didn't see that as necessarily a bad thing, because he's writing about these places in a way that, he's investigating them. He's not saying that he's a believer as such. But then when it comes to the supernatural and paranormal and all that stuff, you have to have some sort of belief. If you want to go into that realm, and the only way you're going to see stuff is if you have some sort of belief. So it is kind of that kind of circle thing where if you don't have it, you're not going to ever see it type thing. But I think that he just feels really embarrassed with how his career has went, because he has kind of sold out a little bit.
Yeah.
Even though he is quite a successful author, like he sold lots of copies of his non-fiction stuff. He never sold lots of copies of the actual book that he wanted to.
They wanted to write, yeah. But again, it's very obvious. Whilst he that's the book that is the height of what he wants to be as a writer, there's also still the sensitive side to it, because when Sam Jackson calls out the father character in it and how he's a bit of an asshole, you see that touch a nerve, which then foreshadows what we see later on in the bathroom, which, I mean, that's a fucking moment. Like,
Yeah,
when he eventually ends up seeing his dad in the bathroom, and his dad's, in a wheelchair, and it's very obvious maybe he has like dementia or something.
looks like
Can't do
it's
anything
definitely
for
a hospital,
himself.
isn't it? Of
Yeah.
some kind of hospital.
It's like a hospital bathroom, just real clinical, white, very, very white. And his dad's sitting there in like like a hospital gown. And he's like, "As I am, you will be." See, when he said that, I was just like, "Oh,
I know.
like you're only gonna be as good as I ever was, ever am." I was like, "Fucking hell!" It gets really deep. It tries to the emotional toll that room exacts on Mike is quite something. And yeah, it's. I mean, we're going to talk more about it, but I feel like we need to start more about how he gets there.
Well, he receives a postcard, doesn't he?
Because we get him, he goes off, he does book signing, he heads back home. He's living in California. And he gets back and he's checking his PO box, and he pulls out a postcard from the Dolphin Hotel.
Dolphin Hotel,
yeah, the Dolphin. And on the back of it says, "Do not enter 1408." And whenever he adds up the numbers, the 1408 equals 13. And he's like, cute. And then he calls them, and he's trying to make he's trying to make a booking to stay in 1408, and the hotel won't have it. So he calls his lawyer, who's fucking Monk.
Yeah.
It's like, hey.
What's his name? Tony Shalhoub.
Sure.
Tony Shalhoub.
Yeah. But yeah,
Monk. Yeah,
it's Monk. Because I completely forgot he was in it. I was like, hey, it's your guy. But yeah, he basically goes and threatens to sue if they don't let him stay. So they come around and they're like, yeah, okay, they're going to let you stay now.
Well, they try to stop him. Even at that point, he arrives at the hotel. It's quite a flashy hotel. It's one of those. It's not as big as the Ritz or the Carlisle, as Samuel L. Jackson says, but it does well. 90% capacity all year round, he says later on. So it is very successful that way, and it is quite a big lobby and stuff. It's not like one of those wee small spooky hotels that you would find on the outskirts of anywhere. It's right in the city center, isn't it?
Yep.
And it's a huge building. He goes into the lobby and he tries to check in, and instantly there's a message pops up saying notify manager instantly. So the girl at the desk goes and gets the manager. Well, she gets somebody first, and then he gets the manager, who happens to be Samuel L. Jackson. Mr. Allen is his name. And he basically tries to dissuade him from staying in it. Now, I will say, I do think the movie does well at building tension at the start and intrigue, and this is interesting, is this room really haunted? And I think that scene with Samuel L. Jackson is maybe a little bit over the top. It's a wee bit too much, because he properly goes into it. He just goes into it straight away. I suppose at the end of the day, people have died there, and they had to explain a lot of the backstory of the room. I think 56 people in total have died.
Yeah.
But Mike only thinks that there's 4 or 5 people.
He only knows of the suicides. Yeah.
Unreported deaths and stuff. And I did like that. I liked the backstory of that and stuff. And he's given photographs and stuff of the bodies and all that sort of stuff.
The folder. He's like, you can have this, just don't stay in that room. And he's trying to give him whiskey and all. He's trying to bribe him basically to be like, don't. He's like, 1406 has the exact same layout. Stay in there. Nobody will know any different. But John Cusack's having none of it. He's like, oh no, for the integrity of my readers and all. And you're like, he's just bullshitting. He's just being a real fucking just an arsehole.
He doesn't believe, so no. He assumes that this is all just for show.
Mm-hmm.
And I do.
That's because he says, he's like, oh, I'll write my book. Your bookings will double. Like, it's a win-win.
Yeah, but then that's when Sam Jackson says, no, I mean, we already are at 90% capacity all year round anyway. We don't need you to write this for us. But I think that scene with Sam Jackson, and I don't know, there was something off about it. I don't know. I liked the backstory, and I liked that he was explaining all the stuff, and I knew that obviously that this was all going to come back at some point in the room. The characters that he mentions were going to appear and all that sort of stuff. So, and they do later on
Mhm.
in some capacity. So I do like that, but I feel like they could have done a little bit more to disguise. Like later on, Mike thinks that his drink's been spiked and
Mhm.
he's just seeing things. He thinks it's a hallucination. I think they could have done a little bit more there to make the audience think, oh, hang on, maybe this is
It's
a
all
game.
bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah. So they could have maybe dropped a few more red herrings at the start to make us question Sam Jackson's character first.
Mm-hmm.
And as the film go on, make us question, oh, hang on, I remember Sam Jackson's character saying this, and I bet you it's this, and I bet you it's that, rather than just being like, no, this is a haunted room.
Yeah.
So they could have done that a little bit better, but I understand they had a lot to do in this movie, and
There's a
they
lot to
did
go
do a
on because
lot in it.
there is the kind of twist moment later on anyway when we're kind of, the paintings come out, the series goes in, there's the three paintings in the room, there's the schooner that's like in a storm, there's the granny reading to the grandchildren and the mom sitting in the back with the baby, and then there's the hunt painting, and when he's like tripping out, like all the paintings have come to life and taken on a new horrific form. Like the hunt, the dogs are attacking everybody. The mother's baby is dead, and the other one, then the ocean one, has come alive, and the sea like
storm,
comes bursting out of the painting, and that's whenever he tumbles back into the ocean, and he's back surfing. He's back. He's under the water, and yeah, that moment where you're just kind of like, right. So wait, was it all just a dream, or what's going on? I don't know. Is that? But I think again, the first time I watched it, and that happened, I was like, right, is he going to go back to the hotel now because he's had that dream, or is something going to happen here? Like, did you?
Well,
Yes.
me being me and just being very sort of cynical of everything that I see, and also being a writer and always questioning things, like I knew that it wasn't real. Like I knew that the room was playing with him essentially, and he was just imagining all this. So even when he was talking to his ex-wife, I was kind of like, this isn't real. This can't be real. So, but I did initially at the start of the film, whenever he has that moment when he's surfing, I did think, oh, he's possibly he's died here, and this room's going to be purgatory, of some kind, because that's, I suppose that's where everybody's mind would go. I mean, that's a pretty generic sort of like, oh, he's dead, so and this is all fake, and he's waiting at the gates essentially to either go up or down, and he has to come to terms with his grief, which is ultimately what the film is about. It's about Mike, who the room essentially makes him accept his grief and accept the death of his daughter, who he did lose a year prior to this, was it?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
it was within a year, I think, wasn't it? She died of cancer, and she was only a wee young girl. And you only find that out in the room. You don't have any inclination of that before he gets to the room. So which was nice. I like that, and I like that was sort of slowly revealed. I do think that maybe when that revelation happened, they could have done it a little bit slower. Whereas they just sort of showed it and went,
it's pretty sudden, yeah, with the
flashbacks and stuff, which I thought was a bit.
Well, I thought the flashback was done well in that it didn't just happen. It does just happen, but it happens as a whole movie on the TV, on the hotel TV. I was like, that's a good way to have a flashback in a movie, is have it play back as home video on the hotel TV, because even prior to that, whenever the first spooky going on is the radio turning on by itself when he's looking out the window and he's running around trying to figure out, like, has the maid managed to get in and like turn everything down before I've noticed. And then the shit just gets wild from there. Like that pretty much comes on straight after that, the home movie.
Does he not injure his hand? Is that before, or
I think that's maybe just after that bit, because is it not whenever he goes to lean out. Is that not whenever he goes to lean out to shout for help? And then it comes down on his hand and he goes to like wash it and the water's like really hot.
Yeah, Bernie. And then that's when he
Bernie
basically
hot.
It's Bernie, ow. Ow. That's whenever he's like, fuck this, I'm checking out. Now that's a cool line in it because that means a lot more than you think it means.
Yep.
The whole idea of checking out. You can check out of the room, but you never really leave, essentially, is what happens.
Yep.
And he decides he doesn't want to be part of this room anymore and he wants to leave. And then that's when he can't leave. And then that's whenever the film really sort of kicks off. You find out that he's basically in this sort of prison. And the room
he's given
like, fuck you, Mike.
But before that, he's given so many opportunities to leave as well. Like when he calls to get the thermostat fixed, and the wee like service guy is like, "I'm not going in that room." He's like, "Just take that faceplate off and hit that wee thing there. It should be good to go." And then he leaves before Cusack can even tip him. You know, and that's again I think at that point I would have been like, right, there's quite a few people who don't want to fuck with this room. I should probably leave. I don't know. Would you have stayed as long as John? Well, obviously, he sticks out till the bitter end. But do you think if you were in a situation like that, would you stay in a room like that in the first place?
Mate, not a fucking chance. Like I do believe there's something out there, paranormal ways, ghosts, stuff like that. I'm not like proper like, super into ghosts and paranormal stuff as an actual real thing, but I do believe there's something out there. And I just think being brought up in a Catholic home and sort of, God fearing, I wasn't
religious
God fearing or anything, but it was always that sort of thing where it was kind of like,
don't fuck with the occult, don't
test your luck, I think is the best thing. And I'm just like, as much as I am interested in stuff like that, I would never test my luck. I'm not interested enough to try to test my luck. I'm happy just saying, nah, do you know what? That's cool, man. I don't need to know. So
tell me the stories, but I won't get involved.
Yeah. Not at all.
I don't know. I'd probably give it a go. I would go and I would stay in the room and see if anything happened. But the moment something happened, I'd be out. I'd be like, fuck this, nope, I'm done. I'm leaving. I'd stay. I'd go and stay in the room, but the moment shit went down, like
the moment the light flickers or something, you're like, that's me.
I'd be like, okay, yep, no, it's all true. I'm out. See you later. I would.
Just a faulty bulb.
Exactly. It could be a faulty bulb. It could be a ghost. I'm not waiting around to see. It's spooky. Fuck that. But I'd give it a go until the spooky shit happened. As soon as the spooky shit goes down, I'm out of there. I would not have waited around as long as John did. The silly man that he is.
No, Mike. Definitely not. No, 100% not. I do love the room, all the shit that happens in the room. So we'll go through some stuff that happens. The alarm, first of all, goes off, plays that Carpenter song. Yep. Constantly that happens quite often, and it made me think a little bit of Groundhog Day.
Yep.
And in many ways, there are some similarities to Groundhog Day as well, because although it's not like a time loop thing where he's reliving the same day over and over again.
Well,
there is a kind of...
There's that moment, whenever the alarm first comes on and it just plays the song. The next time it comes on, it starts a countdown, and it's the 60 minutes. And then when it comes on again later, is when the room's being torn down. When it's ever, he thinks it's the paintings caused the water to come down. He wakes up in the hospital, he's kind of living his life, goes to the PO box, but as he's going into the post office, all the people in the post office are like ghosts from the room, and they start tearing the walls down in the post office. And as
they're workers in the hotel.
They're the workers. But they're not. No, it's one of the waitress in the restaurant that him and his ex-wife are at is one of the victims, of the room.
Yeah, it's the lady that jumps out, but then when he looks away and looks back, she's just changed back to the waitress. So they sort of make it out that he's maybe just sort of seeing things again.
He's tripping. But yes, whenever the walls get torn down and it's revealed to be the room again, do we not have, because that's the songs playing in the post office, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whenever it goes in, and then later on, whenever he is it the moment where he's like lying on the ground and it's freezing, and he's just the room's pretended to be him on the laptop talking to his wife, and he looks over at the clock and it just finishes counting down, and as it finishes counting down, the whole room and the clock resets.
Yeah.
And he's back to like the very start again. And then the fucking phone goes. And that's, as you said, they ask him, "Are you ready to check out?" And I was just like, oh.
Yeah, that was cool.
When they ask him, "Is he ready to check out?" And he's just like, "No, not yet." What a moment.
We have that sort of alarm clock stuff. There is ghosts, there's apparitions that appear to him, projections of people. I thought they weren't great looking, to be honest.
Whenever it's even before that, we don't see the ghost first, but we get a non-paranormal way of showing that there's been dead people in the room when he goes around the room with the black light.
And black light, yeah.
He's just like, it's like this. Like, I know they only clean the room once a year because Sam Jackson says they only ever send a cleanup crew in once a year because the last time one of the cleaners got stuck in that room, she blinded herself because of what she's seen. And was laughing manically. So yes, they only clean the room once a year, but fuck, they do an awful job.
But that was a really good scene actually, because as he was using the black light and things were glowing up, you got the visions of the
flash of the bodies
and the bodies, and the blood stain on the carpet and stuff like that. So that actually helped to sort of paint that picture of what happened in the room. But it is shortly after that when he sees his first ghost. It's the woman, isn't it? Is it
jumping out the window?
Jumping out the window, and then there's the other man as well with the glasses. But actually, there's a really cool jump scare of the guy with the hammer.
Yeah,
which is that was cool, man. That was like
fucking hell. You see that, isn't that just before on the boat? You see that wee character is in the painting on the boat.
Oh, I didn't catch that. No, I didn't catch that.
It's standing on the deck. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Because I was kind of wondering who the fuck is this guy, so I must have missed that. Yeah. But he was he scared the shit out of me.
Big spook.
But yeah, what did you think of the ghost projections? I thought they were a bit. They could have made them a wee bit more spoopy, like.
Yeah, I thought they were all right. I didn't think there was any need to make them, because I think that's one of the. I'd say one of the charms of this film is that it very much, I think, draws on a lot of the kind of urban myths and stuff around haunted hotel rooms, in that they're always just like people who have either like died through suffering at the site, so they're always very human. And yeah, I think they're all right. Like, they're pretty decent ghosts. I think the one that really gets me though, and it's not even like a proper ghost, but is, and I mean, I think we were leading up to this, but the daughter. And when the daughter finally, there's a few moments kind of leading up to the daughter. So the first moment is the flashback home video on the TV. And then later on, he is getting like a ringing, but it's from a fax machine in like a closet. And he opens it, and like the daughter's vest gets printed out, and he's holding that. Man, that there, I was like, what the fuck? And then afterwards, she actually ends up appearing to him. She manifests, and it's like, "Daddy, they're not going to let me stay with you. They're not." And he's like, "No, they can't take you away again. They can't take you away again." And then she just fucking, she
turns to ash.
She just turns to ash in his arms. Oh man, see that moment when he's like, and he's shouting to the heavens, like, "You can't take her again." And he's just distraught. Like, that for me, first watching that for the first time, I was like, what?
Yeah, that was quite powerful. So we spoke about how the paintings come alive as well, and the room's really warm at the beginning, and then it turns to ice towards the end of the hour, and all this surrealism starts happening where he sees his father in the bathroom that has now changed into a hospital room, and there's other things where the room changes and things start melting, like sort of like a Salvador Dali painting.
Yeah, it's a bit Evil Dead too, don't you think, at times?
Yeah, I thought it was a bit Nightmare on Elm Street, because you could imagine things like that happening in an Elm Street movie.
Yeah,
it's very much that kind of surreal images, and surrealism and stuff. The reality changing. in front of your eyes.
What about whenever he's shouting up into the vent to the lady, like in the room next door, who has the baby, and then the sounds of the baby getting louder and louder and like echoing around the room.
And it's
his
ex-wife.
Mm-hmm.
And then
when he's
about the fucking what about the dude in the vent?
Mm-hmm. The dude in the vent
scared the shit out of me, man.
Yep.
That was really spooky. That part that really scared me. Like that was a good jump scare, I have to admit.
There's a few good jump scares in this, and yeah, that's one of them. But yeah, when he's looking down on her with the baby, and she's like, "Mike, help me!" And he's like, "I'm going to get cigarettes," and she looks up and just fucking sees him, and he's like, "Whoa."
I know, because that was the scene that you see a flashback earlier. After the daughter dies, he walks out and says, "I'm away to get cigarettes," but before he goes up into the vent. Earlier on, he thinks he sees a camera in the vent, isn't that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's like,
he thinks he sees somebody. Because he hears like a scuttling.
You see, again, I'm just going to say, small criticism. I think they should have played on that a little bit more and made it a little bit more like, oh, is this Cabin in the Woods style? I know Cabin in the Woods didn't happen for years after this, but that kind of, are they watching me? Are they doing this?
Am I getting punked?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I think they could have played on that a little bit more. But one of the interesting things about this film is the number 13 as well, which, as we mentioned at the start, is, the number of the room added up to the total of 13. But the number 13 appears a few times in this. There's a Bible verse, I think it's something 13 as well, when he opens the Bible and looks at it.
Yeah.
And also, I noticed that the very first victim who died, the guy with the glasses, died in 1912, which adds up to 13 as well. So I don't know what the significance of the number 13 is. Obviously,
unlucky 13.
Obviously, I'm not unlucky 13, but they never really.
They don't really delve much into.
Touch on.
Apart from John Cusack saying it's cute. Equals 13, cute.
I know, but like, what is the significance of it in the context of the film?
Yeah.
What do you think? Just
random. I just think it is. It's just a case of it's unlucky 13. It doesn't seem to be. I wouldn't say there's anything more to it than that.
And going back a little bit to the very start of this episode, when you said that this was the number 88 room on the 14th floor, there is no 13th floor. So technically, this is the 13th floor.
Yeah.
Because it goes straight from 12 to 14. So maybe it's because this is the 13th floor, really. That doesn't exist, apparently.
They don't have I wonder if that's the thing in hotels. Maybe they don't have 13th floors because it's unlucky.
I think you're right. I think actually that could be a thing.
I feel like that's something that kind of. Let us know in the. Does anybody know about hotel architecture? Do they not have a 13th floor because of unluckiness or what?
Could be.
Let us know in the comments below.
Another interesting thing I thought was that happens to the room, and it happens early on, but it doesn't really start happening as much or as at a bigger scale until near the end, is whenever the walls start crumbling. So initially the walls start crumbling and they start leaking when he hears the baby next door, and that's whenever all the surreal stuff starts happening. And then obviously towards the end of the film, the walls just burst in. And I think in a way, the room is supposed to be his reality, his mind. So whenever the walls are crumbling, that's basically his mind crumbling as well, and starting to lose reality and lose control over his own reality, which was nice symbolism as well. One thing I actually really loved about this, one of my favorite scenes, was whenever he's looking out the window. So it's quite a big tower block, and it reminded me of Ghostbusters. I don't know if you got this, but I got the Ghostbusters building from it, because when he's looking out the window, he first throws the lamp out, doesn't he? And it disappears. And then later on,
evaporates.
Yeah, later on he climbs out the window because he's trying to get into the room next door. And then as he gets out on the ledge, he has to climb, I think 18 steps he's counted. And as he gets out on the ledge, which by the way, that was really tense, like that was making me feel a bit queasy, we get this lovely big wide shot of the building, and there's only two windows. And I think that's really cool, and it's quite a nice Gothic building. And I love the stonework and stuff, but I was getting Ghostbuster vibes, man. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I could feel that. I can dig that. I thought actually, you know what you said. I do. I really like that when you've only got the two windows against it. But I thought you were going to mention the scene when he's like looking out and he's shouting for help, and he starts waving at the window across from him,
Oh
and the
yeah,
guy
yeah,
starts copying him. And as the person across the way moves into the light, he realizes that it's him, it's himself, and I think that's the moment where he backs away, and as he backs away, the
yeah.
window slams down in his hand.
That's quite
Isn't
early on. That's really like the
it?
first fucking oh my god, what the fuck is this moment?
It's a me.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a me.
It's a me.
Uh,
I'm like,
that was a really cool scene. Yeah, I always love I just love like mirror stuff and that kind of sort of mirror images and all that sort of weird shit. I love all that weird shit.
oh
But
yeah,
I wanted to come back to something that I think that this film reminded me of quite a lot was, did you ever watch Lost?
yeah,
TV show Lost?
yeah.
There was a lot of this film that reminded me of Lost, which is
Right.
weird. There wasn't anything specific. Well, really, the countdown on the alarm clock. There's a lot of weird shit happens in Lost. We're
No.
not giving away spoilers for anybody that hasn't watched the TV show. It's been out for fucking ages. It's one of the greatest shows ever. You should go and watch it. It's amazing. But it gave me that vibe. I don't know why.
The vibe.
The vibe was definitely Losty.
Mm-hmm.
But there was another film as well. It kind of now this film I haven't seen in a long time. Have you ever seen The Machinist?
With
Christian Bale.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was getting some vibes of that as well because it's about grief and dealing with your grief.
Yeah.
And kind of accepting things that your conscience has almost blocked out.
I just watched The Machinist. I haven't watched it in a long time.
Yeah.
I need to go back and watch it. I just remember fucking Christian Bale looking like Skeletor.
I know he lost like 80 pounds or something.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing performance, but I was getting sort of that vibe as well. But there is a kind of biblical element to this film as well. He mentions Dante's Inferno. You know, you could say that the room is kind of like a metaphor for that as well, because you know the different stages of hell that you have to go through, and also, you know, they talk about isn't there different stages of grief as well?
Yep. There's
like denial and all that stuff.
Denial and anger and and then ultimately
mourning
acceptance
and that kind of stuff. So I think there is a kind of connection between those two as well, and I think that is kind of what they tried to do with The Room. I mean, there's loads of different theories online. I didn't read too deep into them because I didn't really want it to affect my opinion on the film, but I was definitely getting the Dante's Inferno.
Oh yeah, I think it's a really sort of solid watch, and I think definitely the grief side of it really comes through, and I think it kind of peels it back slowly but surely, like all the different kind of elements of what's made him the kind of pessimistic cynic that he is, with his dad and then his daughter, and even his kind of relationship with his wife whenever she's trying to speak to him through the computer and stuff, and how affected he is whenever the room kind of takes over the computer, and the room's basically saying like, give yourself to us, or she's next, sort of thing.
Do you think that he's such a pessimist because after his daughter died, he didn't ever see his daughter, or didn't ever hear her, or she never visited him, or anything like that? So is he thinking that, well, if ghosts did exist, then why did my daughter not come to me, or why could I not see her, or anything like that? Do you think that
maybe
was something to do with it?
Possibly, yeah. Maybe the reason he kept doing the haunted hotel stuff was in the hope. Now, obviously, he kind of mentions how, like, you know, he's just basically left his wife in New York and has not been back to New York. This is the first time he's been back to New York since he left, and he's kind of like, oh, it'll be a good closing chapter for the book, but it's really a good closing chapter for him. You know, he mentions that there, and I think, you know, this was for him was a form of escapism, but also like a punishment, because it's very like he doesn't enjoy what he's doing, but there's maybe a glimmer of hope that maybe if I do find something, I can reach out to my daughter. But this room totally exploits that and turns it into a pretty horrific moment whenever she crumbles in his arms.
Yeah, it's awful. It's really bad. we'll get on to the ending because you mentioned that
endings.
Yeah, you mentioned that there was a few endings, and the ending that you originally saw was, I think, the director's cut. The ending that I saw,
we think it's the director's cut.
We think so. We're not sure. There's 3 endings in total. We know there's 3. The original ending, or the one that I saw on Netflix and that you rewatched recently for this show, was the one where Mike survives at the end. So there's one where he dies, but in this one he survives at the end.
He does. He says he's like, oh yeah, he does the final phone call with him and like, you ready to check out, sir? And he's like, yes, but not the way you want me to. And then he basically pours the whiskey all over the room and sets it ablaze. And that's him, he's killing the room, and he goes out laughing.
He's taking the room down with him, basically.
Taking the room down with him, yeah. Because again, he also wants to save his wife because she's on her way to the hotel. And yeah, so he gets pulled out by the fireman out of the room, and he comes to, and everyone's just kind of like, oh my God, what happened? And just believe he basically had a manic episode. But it cuts to him and the wife in their flat, and she's going through, she's like, oh, the fire department sent your belongings from the hotel room. Most of it's like burnt and stuff. Do you want to keep any of it? And he lifts out the tape recorder and says, oh, been the rest. And he's like, I definitely saw her. I saw her daughter. And she's kind of like, oh, it's just, it must have been in the moment hysteria or whatever. But then he plays the recorder, and it's the conversation that him and the daughter have when she first appears in the room to him. And it's just the kind of like, they both sort of sit and look at each other. And it's just kind of like, it was all real all along. Ooh.
I didn't like the ending.
I was not a fan of that ending at all.
I think it's not the actual ending itself. I think it's how it's directed, and I don't know what, I think they could have done it a bit differently. The way that he's just sort of sitting there randomly, and she walks in and he's just randomly playing it, and then she's like, and they hear the voice, and there isn't really any sort of build up to her speaking. I think it would have been better if they had a bit of a thing. They had to remind the audience that the wife didn't believe that Katie was there, which they kind of do anyway. And then the wife finds the tape recorder, and the wife plays it, and she hears Katie talking, and then she starts crying, and she looks up, and Mike just like is standing, or she sees a reflection of Mike watching her or something like that. I think that would have been a wee bit better.
That would have been a better way to do that ending. But
what's the ending that you saw?
The ending I originally seen was, so Mike does not survive the fire. Mike perishes along with the room, and it cuts to the funeral. It's Mike's funeral, and his agent and his wife are there attending. They're really the only two sort of attending. And then Samuel L. Jackson turns up at the funeral, and as everyone's walking away from the grave, Sam Jackson tries to give a box of, Mike's belongings to his wife. And she's like, no, I don't want any of it. And the agent kind of is like, back off, man. And Sam Jackson's trying to tell her like, oh my God, your husband did a good thing. He got rid of the evil in the hotel. Mm-hmm. And she's like, have none of it. And the agent's like, back away, man. She's just lost her husband. So Sam Jackson goes back to the car. And as he gets in the car, he kind of puts the box down in the passenger seat, but like opens the lid. And inside the box, you see the tape recorder, and you see Katie's vest. And as he looks up into the rearview mirror, John Cusack's like burnt, smoldering body is there, like jump scare. And again, as you said, there's a few good jump scares in this. That's another one, because you don't expect it. It's just like, and I mean, the makeup is incredible, and he's just sitting there like smoldering with, the way before he dies, he has this whole writer gimmick thing of a cigarette. He's given up cigarettes ages ago, but he has one cigarette, his last cigarette that he's going to have before he goes out. And that moment before he sets the room alight, he lights his cigarette and then lights the room up. So he's there in the back of the car, burnt body with the cigarette hanging out his mouth, spooks the hell out of Sam Jackson, who's just like, whoa! And then he disappears. But then you see in the rearview mirror of the car, you see the silhouette of a father and daughter walking off and disappearing. So that for me was a far better end, because you got a wee jump scare in there, and then you also get the reassurance that Katie and Mike are now together in the afterlife. So yeah, that was the ending I was expecting to see, and instead I got the one where Mike lives, and I was like, what the fuck's this? That's not what I came here for.
So I think that's the director's cut.
Mm-hmm.
And then the actual original, the first ending that was shown to audiences was just Mike dying, and I think
too grim.
I don't know exactly what happened. There was still something about the tape recorder. I think that was always part of every ending, but I don't know whether it was just Mike dying and the wife finding the tape recorder or something. But apparently it was very grim. Yeah, and the audiences didn't like it, so that's why they reshot the two other different endings. So I prefer your ending. I prefer the director's cut ending.
Yeah.
So I will try and seek that out. But yeah, I think you're in it. That ending that you're explaining is definitely better. But overall, did enjoy the film. I do think it's good, but I personally wouldn't put it anywhere near any of some of the big stuff. Obviously, the obvious ones that we've already mentioned, that we've probably already mentioned on the show in previous episodes. Is this? We definitely spoke about it before.
We've talked about It's. We've talked about It's, and
is this the second?
This is maybe only our second King adaptation.
Wow.
Oh no, well we talked about Cujo. We talked about Cujo with D. Wallace.
Oh, with D. Wallace, that's right.
Oh. So just name.
Did you know we interviewed D. Wallace?
Did you know that we talked to D. Wallace once about Cujo? So yeah, we've kind of touched on Cujo. But yeah, maybe this is actually.
That's crazy, isn't it? This is only the second proper episode.
We must have to do more King. Yeah,
we'll definitely have to do more King. And if you're a King fan, you can go over to the Fright Club website and read one of our contributors, Joseph McElroy, writes really great in-depth articles about Stephen King's adaptations for the screen, for the small screen and the big screen. It's called King's Corner. So I think we're about 5 or 6 in. So go and check that out because they're really great. Yeah. But that's all the time we've got for this week, Danny. Anything else you want to finish on before we wrap this up?
No, I don't think so. I think we're all good. We'll end it there. We shall check out.
We will check out
before they charge us for another night because we didn't check out by 11 o'clock. You know. And
before we check out, we'll steal everything.
Of course, all the wee soaps and the wee hand towels. Yeah. If it's not bolted down, we're taking it. And except for the light bulbs. The light bulbs, of course. I was going to say the lamps because the lamps will evaporate if they leave the hotel. So
exactly,
you know,
the batteries from the TV, you know.
I wonder, did he get dressing gown? I wonder, did he get like a wee dolphin dressing gown? Did he get slippers? The wee slippers as well. Yeah.
To be honest, it didn't look like a too flat. It was quite a big room. There was different rooms within the room, but
you got the little pillow mints. He did get pillow mints. And in fact, he got more pillow mints whenever the ghosties turned his room down without him noticing.
Yeah.
So, you know,
at least they fixed the wee toilet paper and all.
At least they're considerate.
I know. But, you know, I think the negative shit outweighed the positive shit. So
also, the price of a thing of nuts was like $8 for a thing of nuts. Which I was like, daylight robbery. Hotel prices, am I right?
Typical, I know. New York, what do you think? Did enjoy it. Not one of my favorites, but no, did enjoy it. So let us know what you think of the 1408 or Room 1408. 1408.
1408. Available now on Netflix. Give us money, Netflix.
Give us money, please pay us. Please pay us for this. No, let us know your comments on the film, and if you've read the short story as well. You know, did you enjoy the short story more? And you know, tell us what you think is better. And if you have any theories on what the room was, and there's a lot of theories. We spoke about a few there. So
Gateway to Hell.
It's Satan's arsehole.
Satan's bum bum.
As we bum. As we rectum. As Dot. As Ricky Dot. So we'll leave that there. I'll cut that. So next week's the finale, Danny, of season 5.
Season 5 finale. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thunk it?
Who'd have thunk it? Look at us. Look at us. So we'll leave it there and we'll let you get back to whatever the fuck you're doing. Thanks again for watching. As always, go and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. It's at the Fright Club NI. Please go and visit the website. It's www.frightclubni.com, and please subscribe to the channel.
Like,
comment,
tell all your horror calls. Hit the wee bell icon. Let everybody know. We're hoping by the end of season 5 to hit 400 500 subscribers.
500.
Maybe do something special at 500.
700.
An ambitious boy.
I know. It'd be nice to have like 400. We're quite still a wee bit off 400, but it'd be nice to hit 400 before we start season 6.
Yeah.
We're going to be taking the break after season 5, obviously, so it'd be nice to hit that number before season 6. So anyway, that's it. We're fucking off. We're checking out.
I'm checking out of 1,408.
Take care. Stay safe. All the best. Bye.
Bye.